Today I will tell you a story about a boy who got lost in his own thoughts, in his own words. A boy who walked too far into the places of the mind where silence hums like an echo, where the line between what is dreamt and what is real begins to blur. That boy was me. And even now, as I speak, I'm not certain whether I ever truly came back. It started on an ordinary evening, or at least it looked ordinary from the outside. The sun had already dipped below the pines, leaving behind that strange twilight glow that makes the world look both alive and ghostly at the same time. I had been sitting on the porch of my grandfather's cabin, notebook in hand, scribbling thoughts that didn't quite belong to me. Words that felt whispered, like they had been slipped under the door of my consciousness. I was only 17 then, restless, curious, the kind of kid who would stare too long at shadows just to see if they stared back. That night, I wrote a sentence I don't remember thinking. If you follow the path of your own words, you'll never come back the same. The moment the pen left the page, I felt the air shift. It was subtle at first, like the pressure before a storm. The forest, usually alive with crickets and owls, went silent. The trees stood too still, their branches heavy as though holding their breath. My skin prickled, and I swear the ink on the paper shimmered faintly, like it wanted to crawl free. I don't know why I did it, but I stood, closed the notebook, and walked toward the tree line. Every step felt rehearsed, as if I had practiced it in dreams. The woods opened before me, but they weren't the same woods I had known since childhood. The familiar path curved where it never had before, bending deeper, winding tighter. I followed, the silence swallowing the sound of my footsteps. After a while, I noticed the trees had changed. Their bark was pale, almost white, and their leaves were darker than night itself. I touched one trunk, and it felt warm, almost feverish, pulsing faintly beneath my palm. Something in me whispered to keep going. That's when I saw it, the boy. Or maybe it was a reflection of me, I couldn't tell. He was standing a few yards ahead, his back turned. His clothes were mine, his shoulders shaped the same way. I opened my mouth to call out, but no sound came. The boy turned slowly, and I saw my own face staring back. Only his eyes were wrong, too bright, glowing faintly, like coals under ash. He smiled, and it wasn't my smile. "I've been waiting," he said in a voice that sounded like mine, but stretched, distorted. "You finally wrote the door." A chill ran through me, but I couldn't step back. My own words had trapped me, and somehow I knew this was just the beginning.
The boy, my reflection, my shadow, whatever he was, didn't move closer. He just stood there, watching me with those ember-bright eyes. The air between us felt thick, like water, and every breath came heavy. "What are you?" I finally managed to whisper, though it sounded faint, muffled, like I was speaking from under a blanket. He tilted his head, a mirror of my own nervous habit. "I'm you," he said softly, "but the words you left behind. The parts you never finished." Something about that phrase made my stomach twist. I thought about the notebook, the countless pages filled with half-sentences, scribbles, abandoned ideas. It was like he'd been waiting for me in those margins, growing stronger every time I didn't complete a thought. I wanted to run, but the forest around me shifted when I even considered it. The pale trees seemed to lean closer, their roots curling like fingers across the soil, closing any escape. "Why am I here?" I asked. His smile deepened, though it was still wrong on my face. "Because you opened the door. You wrote the words, and now you'll walk until you find the ending." Before I could reply, the boy turned and walked down the path, fading into the deeper dark. Against every instinct, I followed. The forest wasn't just silent anymore, it was humming, a low, steady vibration, like the earth itself was singing. The sound settled in my chest, syncing with my heartbeat, guiding my steps. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't feel real there. Hours might have passed, or only seconds. Eventually, the path widened into a clearing, lit by a strange bluish glow. In the center stood a pool of water, perfectly still, as though carved from glass. The boy was already there, crouched at the edge, staring into his reflection. "Look," he commanded. I knelt beside him and peered into the water. At first I saw only myself, tired eyes, pale skin under the eerie light. Then the image rippled. My reflection blinked out of sync, its lips moving even though mine were still. "You don't belong here." The water stilled again, and this time the reflection wasn't me at all. It was a door. An old wooden door, carved with symbols that twisted if I looked too long. My hand reached out on its own, fingers brushing the surface. The water rippled like smoke, and suddenly, the clearing, the forest, even the boy, all of it, dissolved into darkness. And I was falling. The fall wasn't like falling through air. It was thicker, slower, like sinking into ink. My arms flailed, but there was nothing to grab, no up or down, just endless dark. Then, as suddenly as it began, I landed, not with pain, but with a quiet thud, as though the ground had been expecting me. I opened my eyes and found myself in a vast corridor. The walls weren't stone or wood, but shifting patterns of letters, words tumbling and rearranging themselves like living vines. Some words I recognized, phrases I had written late at night half asleep. Others were foreign, twisting into shapes that hurt my eyes when I tried too hard to read them. The corridor stretched endlessly in both directions, glowing faintly with that same bluish light from the forest clearing. My footsteps echoed, though I wasn't sure if the echoes belonged to me or to something walking just out of sight. Then I heard it, the boy's voice, carried from far ahead. "Closer now." The ending waits I ran. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and curiosity, each beat urging me forward. The words on the walls shifted faster as I passed, sentences unraveling and weaving into new ones. I caught glimpses, warnings maybe. "You will forget your name. The mirror always takes its due. Do not answer when he asks." But before I could stop to think, the corridor opened into another chamber. This one was circular, the walls lined with tall mirrors that reached the ceiling. Each mirror showed me, but not as I was. One reflection was me as a child, wide-eyed and lost. Another was me older, tired, with shadows under my eyes. Another was me with scars I'd never known, eyes filled with bitterness. Each version stared back as though waiting for me to choose. The boy stood in the center, arms outstretched. "See? Every version of you, every path you never walked. Do you understand now? Words don't just tell stories. They make them." His voice echoed in the chamber, but behind his words, I thought I heard whispers from the mirrors themselves. My own voices, thousands of them, overlapping in desperate harmony. The circle of mirrors pulsed with light, each reflection flickering like a living flame. My chest tightened as I looked from one version of myself to the next, all silently begging for recognition. Some wept, some smiled, some stared with empty eyes. And in the middle of it all, the boy, my double, my shadow, waited with his hand out, patient, knowing. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to smash the mirrors, to tear the words from the walls and shatter this impossible place. But I couldn't move. The boy's voice threaded through me like a song. "Don't you see?" he whispered. "You've already chosen. You came here because you wanted more than the quiet porch, more than notebooks no one reads. You wanted your story to matter. And here," he swept his hand toward the mirrors, "every version matters." The older reflection pressed his hand harder against the glass, face lined with desperation. "If you take his hand, you'll vanish. You won't come back. You'll be another echo, lost in words that aren't yours." My heart thundered. I could feel the walls tightening, words spiraling faster, letters unraveling like threads from a torn book. The chamber groaned, as though the place itself hungered for my decision. The boy stepped closer, so near I could see the faint shimmer in his skin. Like he wasn't made of flesh, but of sentences, fragments bound together. "Say yes," he urged, "and you'll never be forgotten." My mouth was dry, but the word formed anyway. "No." His smile faltered. The mirrors rattled. Whispers rose into a storm, voices overlapping, clawing at my ears. He tilted his head, studying me with those burning eyes. "Then you'll be erased. Do you prefer that?" I shook my head. "I'll write my own ending." For a heartbeat, silence. Then the chamber cracked like glass, the mirrors shattered inward, reflections exploding into shards of light. The boy screamed, not with anger, but with something that sounded like sorrow.